ahead with our next presentation on the topic surviving and thriving in the COVID-19 world. And to present on this topic, I would like to introduce Mr. Satish Kashyap, Chief Operating Officer from NSEIT. Mr. Kashyap, all over to you.
Hi, Devanshi. I hope you all are able to hear me. The topic, after a very interesting panel which discussed at great length, I thank Shrikant, Mukesh, Obama, and the other panelists for quite a bit of insights on this. Surviving and thriving in the COVID world, and what are we seeing, and how can we help work with you in this? That's been the topic that we're trying to work on. Now, any aspect of COVID has been quite difficult to discuss for many people in the industry, because when it hit us in March, we were completely taken by surprise. We had to go through a phase where everybody decided to pause, stop, revisit, and look at the entire system in order to try and identify the extent of problems that we are looking at. Everyone in the sector took a while to figure out what would we do next. We've had stories regarding rising NPAs, the moratorium, the impact. From all sides, we've realized that this has caused us to revisit every plan, and this was not even in a disaster recovery plan for most organizations. So clearly, we were in an era where we were facing a whole bunch of new monsters, the kind of which we had not seen before. Listing out some of the challenges due to COVID would actually be one of the easiest things for most panel members. Everything that happened due to COVID was a challenge in some way or another. Whether it was a current view of what would happen to NPAs, whether it was a view that revenues would get stalled, we wouldn't have agents, we wouldn't have our partners out on the field in order to generate more business, whether the way it would impact us in terms of capital adequacy, in terms of credit costs. From every angle, one had to really look at it as saying that we were now going to fight what is called roughly a 10-headed serpent. This reminds me that making any session about COVID and not providing a view which would actually help us think about the problem philosophically would not really make much value add to many of the people here. So let me just look at it in this way. There is the old story of Hercules and his fight with Hydra. The whole context of Hydra, as viewed through Nicholas Taleb or anyone else, is a view of antifragility. Unlike the past where we wanted systems which were stable, unlike the past where we wanted systems which were robust and could handle changes, we were now in an era where we wanted a system which could actually thrive in chaos. So this entire process where we wanted to use what we had, the chaos, as an opportunity, is something that we needed to look at as a part of this industry. As an industry which was growing, had a certain set of challenges coming into COVID, the entire NBFC space had to look at COVID, look at the pressures that it threw upon them, and figure out how to use this to grow and to transform. So as Taleb says, things that thrive from disorder. The Hydra is one such model, one would say. You chop off one head of the serpent and two heads come in its place. That's clearly a kind of thinking that was totally made for an era when chaos and where the number of serpents that were attacking us could not be counted. It is against this context that we view the whole paradigm of pause, survive, and then grow. The initial phase in March was one of pause. Let's all think about what's happening. Let's all figure out a way to start activity. We were suddenly in a stop button hit on March, and we were trying to figure out how could we get back to a certain way of at least normalized operation. That normalized operation from pause could be called a survive. And then onto the model that we were looking for, a model in which we were looking at growth, a model in which we were trying to drive huge numbers. We're trying to make this transition the pause mode, where we were trying to first get all our people back onto their desktops. We knew people had suddenly gone out of office, did not even have access to workspaces in some case. How could we use the power of technology in order to enable these kind of immediate processes so that we could start operation? Was roughly a key element of the pause phase, one would say. The survive phase started out for the next level, where we started looking at how can we get certain basic things operational? How can we do process automation? How can we keep things moving at least, if collection was earlier a set of feet on the street, how can we now create the links? How can we now leverage existing technology stacks, whether it be UPI, whether it be another form of channel of payment? How can we use all of them rapidly in order to get our business back on track? So whether it was trying to do digital onboarding of our partners, whether it was trying to do process automation, at one point in time saying, I have all of these applications which are there in my office, and earlier I could walk across, but now in COVID, I need to automate that process. It needs to work on the cloud. It needs to work without people over there in office. So this moved over time. So somewhere about June, July, I would say the kind of things that we were talking to customers were moved into the phrase, what we call a survive phrase. I don't have this part of the process digitized. Can you help us with this part of the process digitization? Now, actually, as we come into November, one would say that we are actually trying to revisit the path of growth. It has taken us a little bit of a hit. It has taken us a little bit of a while, but it's actually a kind of growth which may be, from an evolutionary standpoint, good for us to handle a future calamity, a future problem, and actually a way by which we could engage significantly with the next generation. So as we talk about growth and growth-related technology changes, we're talking about how can we engage with the ecosystem. Customers are trying to see how can we leverage the API stack that is available. How can we make sure we use more automated models to do all of the pieces, which was earlier having significant amount of manual intervention. So this entire phrase from somewhere to March to November, I would say could be categorized under this approach of saying that we first took a pause as we got hit, as we tried to understand COVID. And during that phase, we looked at certain set of technology stacks, which I'll try and cover now. Similarly, at the next stage, we went into a survival mode and we looked at another set of technology stacks in order to grow back to normal operation. And now coming into November, we're actually looking at how can we grow this business using newer and newer elements of the technology stack. In the pause phase, what we started seeing in many ways were things like the adoption of the cloud. How can we get our entire workspace onto the cloud? How can we get our infrastructure onto the cloud? While some set of customers in the NBFC stack are pure digital natives, there is a whole bunch of customers, the larger value, the larger people with the larger balance sheets, who were still not digital natives. They had started various projects. As you would have heard in the previous panel, there were folks who had started working with voice bots. There are folks who had started working with RPAs, but they clearly realized that we needed to adopt this at a much rapid pace. So clearly, cloud was one of the key pieces of making sure our entire infrastructure was accessible to the entire technology, operations, and business users overnight on the cloud. So that was a key area of work that we saw growing during the initial phases. The use of low-code, no-code was another piece which was essential to get back basic processes. There were a whole bunch of processes in the NBFC stack which were completely paper-based. And as COVID hit, we immediately had to figure out how to use a low-code, no-code platform. And we saw customers trying to say, can we get this process digitized? Can you do it in such a way that it's web and mobile ready? And can you come back to us in a week? Now here, clearly, we did work with an open source, low-code, no-code stack with a few of our customers in order to get them engaged on this piece and in order to get them rapidly ready. And many of our customers were looking at deploying many of these pieces on the cloud. So clearly, the first phase of pause was one about digitizing our applications quickly using the cloud infrastructure in a completely agile way. And this was the first set of activities that we at NSEIT saw during the early phases, what I would call the March, April, May kind of phase of the COVID era. In the next phase, we saw a whole bunch of activities which started moving to the next level of straight-through processing, the next level of paper removal. We started clearly hearing from customers things that they had looked at in the past. They had looked at IPAs, they had looked at RPA, but clearly now they needed to quickly figure out how to implement it for various processes in order to get things moving faster. We also had a whole bunch of talk and work related to the area of decision engines. How can we improve our decision engines? How can we create larger rules within the low-code, no-code framework? While you digitized a process, we now want to reduce the dependency on any manual stop to the greatest extent possible. This was completely different thinking from earlier, where we were only aiming at digitization. Here, we moved beyond digitization to try and aim for straight-through processing at every step of the way. At every step, we were being asked, can this be removed? Can this be automated? Can we reduce the dependence of having people come in each stage of this process? Clearly, this was a process of making sure that in spite of COVID, we were leveraging technology to survive and keep our systems working. This second phase saw significant focus, as I keep repeating, on straight-through processing and making this entire process automated. Now I'm slowly feeling that as we talk to customers now, we're realizing that we're moving back to a phase of growth. There is once again a discussion regarding how can we engage with new APIs? How can we engage in a greater way with the fintech ecosystem? How can we make sure that fintechs and a whole bunch of new apps are able to connect with our system? We've moved very rapidly from a phase. Look at the kind of response. In a matter of about 6 to 7 months, we are now coming back to saying we will be completely API driven. We were talking about APIs way back in March. We were talking about APIs in UPI. We were talking about APIs for certain elements of KYC. But now the kind of APIs that we are talking about are much, much more different. Even for a large corporate account, can I access their balance sheet? Can I access their results with related to whether it be data related to legal cases, proceedings? Can I access all of that through APIs? Can I bring this entire process? Can I put all of this data? Can I get natural language processing in place to extract data where we find out X customer, where all is he connected? Is there a graph through which I can understand his relationship with any legal proceedings that have happened? We're seeing a whole bunch of traction around API gateways, accessing these APIs, processing data, whether it be fraud detection through graph databases, whether it be leveraging Elasticsearch in order to analyze data in a real-time way. We're seeing a whole bunch of traction towards APIs and AI ML as we move into the last few months. And we believe that this entire journey is just getting started. The kind of integration that we are seeing with the fintech ecosystem is going to be transformative. We're at early stages of engaging with the ecosystem, while some would say, as in the early panels mentioned, that the fintech ecosystem got launched now about 5 to 6 years ago. We're now at a phase where massive fintech adoption is on the cards. We're seeing larger institutions realizing that they can work significantly by cooperating with fintech players, leveraging APIs, leveraging their data sets, leveraging their access to customer in order to use and deliver growth in their business at this point in time. So as I look through this framework, NSEIT has been providing a whole bunch of solutions through this stack, whether it be our immense partnerships in the RPA and IPA space, where we're working with a whole bunch of partners, including Automation Anywhere, UiPath, AdWorks, in order to help implement straight-through processing, whether it be document scanning, whether it be coordinating across multiple applications in order to ensure straight-through processing of a loan application, of a collection, of a customer query. We've been working with customers across this journey at various areas in order to remove manual steps in the process. The next step of our journey has been the work on the cloud. While working with AWS Azure has been one part of the journey, we've had customers who've been looking at trying to use tools like OpenStack and OpenShift in order to move the cloud game to the next level. We've started engaging with an infrastructure automation platform called Terraform, which is trying to help customers automate the process. We're in an era where a customer or a test manager just says, I want to improve or I want to launch the new version of this payment gateway application for testing it. And from that ticket all the way down to deploying that infrastructure, we're reaching a stage where we've automated it and deployed it for a customer in order for him to be able to leverage infrastructure automation at scale. So that's another area of work on the cloud, where initially it was more about using COVID has caused us to revisit APIs in a big way. On the one side, we're looking at using APIs for all parts of our processes of decisioning. We're trying to reduce the dependence on what I would call manual processes and manual thought process to a complete data-driven approach. This process has meant we've been taking APIs for various kinds of data in order to make this decisioning happen. At the other end of the APIfication process, is the fact that through APIs, we've increased our engagement with the fintech community, which is getting NBFCs greater business. We are actively working with customers in order to implement API gateways, leverage data from external APIs. We are also helping one customer manage the way fintechs are being onboarded into the particular institution through the APIs that they have built out. Decisioning engines, low-code, no-code platforms, which are driving digitization, are all part of the play that we are currently working with our customers on. AI/ML, while initially was viewed as from a point of view of chatbots and voice bots, has now found its way into core areas like fraud detection, where we're trying to figure out the relationships. We're trying to help customers engage with their other partners in order to help them in collection, in order to help them in doing credit decisioning at this point in time.
Mr. Kashyap, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but it would be great if you could just wrap it up in a minute.
Surely, I'm on the last slide or so, not too far away. Yeah. So within the app and infrastructure modernization area, as I was telling you, we've done a whole bunch of work around helping customers migrate to the cloud, helping customers become agile through use of DevOps, and working with them in the whole area of APIfication. From a transformation process, the whole use of DPM tools, the use of decisioning tools, the use of RPA has been something that NSEIT has been working on significantly through the course of this COVID phase. The build out of data and analytics models, whether they be in the area of fraud, whether they be in the area of infrastructure monitoring, has been something that we've been actively working with at various stages. We've worked across account aggregators, we worked across NBFCs, we worked across banks. We've also worked across the regulator significantly during this period of time in order to help enhance our knowledge in terms of implementation and help customers through this phase of COVID. With a whole bunch of relationships across the entire BFSI stack, we are well positioned to help customers as they get into this journey. Our deep domain expertise in the financial services world and being a right-sized partner for many customers, given that we're not a multi-billion-dollar enterprise in that sense, but right-sized in order to work with NBFCs as they grow through this time, as well as our work through the partnership and ecosystem on the startup side has been something that has helped us get deeper relationships with NBFCs during this phase of time. I hope to engage with many of you, as well as along with my team, which are waiting at this session to take this relationship to the next level and help you not just pause or not just survive the COVID phase, but to thrive and grow in an anti-fragile way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kashyap. It was an exciting session.
Thank you very much.